And that's a huge expense, you know, to have that kind of help at such a young, you know, really early in my career.
And back in those days, that's when the GSXR series that Suzuki introduced the GSXR in 1985 or 86.
85.
And they introduced the GSXR series with a huge, I mean, the contingency program they had for that motorcycle. A guy like you could go out and actually make a living. And Doug Poland came through there, same thing. You could actually make a living racing motorbikes.
And Doug Poland kind of set the standard. You know, he was out there winning all the money, and thank God for Suzuki having a program like that where you could, you know, we mapped it out. You know, every weekend I could go to Texas, Florida, wherever I had to go, Michigan. I could go and make $3 grand if I won all 3 races. Back in the 80s, that was good money to a guy like me. And so 1986, I started in racing. 87, 88, 89, throughout that Suzuki Cup, you know, was able to follow my heart and quit working the real job and focus on being a professional motorcycle racer.
Then you progressed on up, and of course you got to be most memorable. You got associated with Muzzy, Rob Muzzy, and Muzzy Racing in your superbike. Well, was that your first super?
My first pro ride was Yosh.
Was Yosh?
You know, and at the time they were the team to be with. I mean, it was back in the day. Early before then, it was Honda and Yosh. Remember, they would go back and forth.
Did you touch it all on the Pops Yoshimura days?
No. Not
just
really.
a little, just you came just after.
Yeah, just 89, and then I only rode for him for 1 year, and then Rob Muzzy came along and offered me an option to go to the Kawasaki team. So.
Right, and your association with Rob Muzzy in those days was not only Superbike championships here in the U.S., but on to that moved you up into the world stage. Tell us a little bit about that transition from when you went from the AMA championship over to the this American team going over to the world level. What was that like?
Yeah, it was really awesome. I mean, as a racer, you know, you dream of going to Europe. That's kind of where the money is in the sports, you know. And then you can't be a world champion in America, so you got to travel over the water and do it over there. So in 1992, I'd already won the Superbike championship here in AMA, and we had plans of going to Europe the next year. So we did a couple of races in '92 to test the waters. Podiumed at most of those races we were at, and so we felt like we had a legitimate shot at coming over here and competing the next year. And what was cool about it is, you know, back in the day, I mean, it was a shoestring budget, really. We were running out of a back of a box truck up against the big factory Ducati team with the big semi-rigs, full of engines, bikes, endless supply, it looked like, of money for them. And so it was kind of the David and Goliath battle, and we won that.
Now, when you came to the party in here, like you say, you drive into the paddock in the little box van, those guys have a tendency to kind of look down their nose at you a little bit?
I think they probably looked at us and wondered what were those guys thinking. But they quickly realized that we were meant business, and you know, when we hit the racetrack, it didn't matter. It was me and Paul Fogarty that had to sort it out at that point. Right,
and that would have been your big rivalry then, was Fogarty. There was quite a few other guys. Now, were there any other Americans in the Superbike Championship Series then in Europe?
Not really. I mean, Poland had just finished winning up championships. He won 2, 91 and 92, I think he did. And then before that, Fred Merkel really laid down the ground, you know, and he went over there. He won the championship in 1988, 89. So, you know, we talked about me going over there first year and winning it, but really, you know, Merkel did that.
Absolutely.
You know, Fred really was the first American to go over there, and I can't be sure. I'm pretty sure that he didn't see all the racetracks, similar to what, you know, they were all new to him in 88. So, you know, I was just kind of doing my thing, you know, racing hard. And we had a great effort with Kawasaki.
Absolutely.
The bike was really starting to come around. It wasn't the fastest bike on the racetrack. It did everything good, so it allowed me to go over there and really be competitive at every track. And the emphasis was on me at that point.
And 1993 was a watershed year for Americans in World Championship racing. Kevin Schwantz won the 1993 World Championship in MotoGP on the Suzuki. You won the World Championship in 1993 on the Kawasaki. That was a big year for America. And while we're talking about Americans on that level, what do you see now and maybe in the future for the ability of an American? I mean, I know it's tough right now. The ability of an American to excel here in the U.S. and then to make that next step to go. I mean, it's a lot different. You don't do it with a box van anymore.
No.
Is that doable?
It is doable. I mean, it's difficult now. Like you said, they're starting these kids at 10, 13. They're kids now riding. They've got programs that bring them through. And
right.
Back when we did it, they didn't have that. So you got to realize now that there's more opportunities for young kids to be on these motorcycles and learning at a young age. And it was different back then.
Do you see that in the U.S. or? And I know I was in Germany in September, and I went to a German championship round, and there was 125s. There was Moto 3, there was 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. I mean, it was so cool. They had this foundation. You could see it, and this was just in Germany, and all the other countries have that foundation. It doesn't seem like we have that here.
Well, there's a lot more kid racers than you think out here now, and they're doing it at go-kart tracks and places like that. For instance, yesterday I had 3 different fathers showing me pictures of their kids, you know, dragging knees. That makes me smile, you know. So
absolutely,
we got a future. We've got some young talent in the AMA pool right now. Cameron Bouvier comes to mind, a Yamaha rider, and really a special rider, you know. And I think, but to make that transition from here to there is tougher, because what the young kid thing we got going here is also Spain. It's huge, and,
right.
And they tend to draw from that, you know, instead of looking over here anymore.
Right.
You know, you really got to be a standout to get their attention. Now, Ben Spees was the last guy that we felt was our great hope to go over there and do it, and you know, he's done pretty well, won a couple of races, but you know, to make that next step to challenge the guys like Lorenzo and Pedrosa, I mean, you've got to, they call those guys aliens, and I kind of believe it. They really ride.
Well, and I think the bottom line is, to make that transition, as talented as a guy could be, it's cubic dollars. Unfortunately, it's down to cubic dollars to be able to even if a guy got a ride, you still have to be able to support yourself to it in a pretty stout 6-figure number just to be able to live over there for a year.
That's right.
So that's what it amounts to, and hopefully we'll see that, and we'll see some change. They're making changes in MotoGP. They're making some changes in the new rules. The new rules are out. Have you had an opportunity now? In your day when you rode MotoGP, I mean, throttle control. It was all about the rider and throttle control and power bands on those 2-strokes that were about 3,000 RPM long,
right.
If that. Have you had a chance to ride some of the new electronics on some of the new bikes?
I have. We have new R1s that we ride at our school, our Yamaha Champions riding school, and so I get a chance to start play around with the traction control, stuff like that on that. Unfortunately haven't had a chance to ride a modern day MotoGP bike, but hopefully I'll get an opportunity one day to throw a leg over one of those. And so, you know, it's changed a lot,
right.
You know, with the high horsepower numbers that these thousands are putting out, because back in the day we were racing 750s or 500 2-strokes, like you said.
Right. So
now we got more displacement, we got a whole lot more horsepower. How do you handle that? They feel like they needed to go that direction, and that's kind of the future. It'll never turn around and come back to the old school way, which a lot of us old riders like to see sideways, smoke in the tire, wheeling everywhere. Those days are kind of gone.
Yep. Yeah, I think when, like you say, with the kind of horsepower these motorcycles are putting out, I had the pleasure of interviewing Kevin Schwantz during these shows, and he will say you have to have the electronics to be able to control that horsepower and be able to ride the motorcycle. And actually, Colin Edwards made an interesting statement that it's actually the electronics, considering the motorcycle and the technical capabilities of the motorcycle, the electronics are actually extending careers.
Yeah.
You can live longer without getting high-sided. I mean, it's just you have to do that.
It's a great thing, you know. I'm sure the riders really enjoying that part of it, you know, because
right.
It was standard procedure back in my day. 2 or 3 guys were getting ejected each session off the high side, breaking
right.
bones, missing races, you know, ruining chances at championships. So it's a good thing now. Like I said, with 250 plus horsepower, some of these GP bikes are putting out. I mean, that right there is 150 horsepower. So
right.
If you don't have some kind of help, you better have a real slow hand.
Let's talk a little bit about Daytona, Scott. I mean, your name has become synonymous with Daytona, and your 5 Daytona wins, which was not actually the beginning of your career. It came later on, actually, early in your career. The obvious question is, how were you able to have that special relationship with that racetrack to be able to be so dominant? I mean, to fall down and come back and win the race. I mean, good grief. I mean, that's a special relationship with something about you and that race just clicked. Can you describe that?
It's difficult to put my finger on why or how. I mean, one thing. I think number one, the tires that we run at Daytona are really special. They're very hard, compound. They don't offer a lot of grip in the infield. So the trick for me was to get the bike in and let's triangulate more of the corner instead of a nice line 180 corner, I'm going to make more of a triangulated. I'm going to come in early tighter. My middle corner speed's going to be a little bit slower than some of the other riders, but I'm going to turn the bike harder and get it off the edge of the tire. And that was the trick. It was not that tricky, you know. It was for me. I figured it out, and I was blown away that, you know, there were a lot of riders that challenged me down there for sure in a lot of those 5 wins, but they weren't able to really figure that out, you know, how to get the most out of the rear tire. And I think that was the trick. The track is fairly straightforward. It's not a technical racetrack by no means. It's just how can I extract the most grip and get the power to the ground, I think. And
what was the brand mix on those, in those 5 wins, in the different brands that you won them on?
I won only on 2 different brands, Kawasaki and the Yamaha.
And the Yamaha, right.
I had a great opportunity on the Suzuki in '96, but one of my arch rivals down there, Miguel Duhamel, was able to snake me off NASCAR 4 and put a nice move and avoid the draft, you know. I actually should have won 7 in a row. The 2 I won from '92 to '98, I was either first or second, and the 2 times I lost was combined less than 1 second. So it's like, you know, that's still 5. I'm happy with that.
You bet.
Yeah.
Who was your biggest rival at Daytona?
Well, I would have to say Miguel would have been one of them.
He was so dominant during that.
He actually won a lot more races overall than I did at Daytona, between 600s, you know, different classes. So his dad would argue the fact that he's the real Mr. Daytona. But the fact is, he won the big one 5 times. I won it 5 times. And 2 of those wins for him were on a 600. So we, you know, we look at a little bit of distance, whatever.
And also, something that another feather in your career cap is your 750 Super Sport. When we had the 750 Super Sport series in AMA, you won more of those than anyone ever did, and they'll never take that away from you because that doesn't exist anymore. But that's another thing that you did, was you dominated that class.
I did, you know. Those Kawasaki's were really good back in the day, and we had a handle on that. And you know, I was really, you know, coming on. My career was just, I was learning so fast. Riding so well back then. I used that class as just a warm-up for the superbike race, you know, so I'd run 2 or 3 different classes sometimes when I'd run the 600, but so it was a cool class, you know, set some records, went undefeated 1 year, and yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. At the time we didn't register, you know. Now, you know, that Nick had to remind me last year that, you know, you're the first guy to ever go undefeated in AMA road race. I'm like, okay. So that was nice to hear. And I don't know, it's just one of those deals. I just went out and did it.
Did you have a favorite motorcycle during your career? Because you rode Ducati, some Ducatis, Yamahas, Kawasaki's. Little known fact, you actually rode the Harley Davidson.
I rode the Harley at the end.
Yep.
My favorite bike would have definitely been the Kawasaki. You can't argue with all the success I had on that motorcycle, and just the ergonomics of the motorcycle when I sat on it, it would just fit me. I'm a big guy, you know, when you look at the racers now, they're like little jockeys. So. But back in the day, they had bigger fairings on these motorcycles. The motorcycles got so small now that I was able to hide behind it, and I actually felt like more leverage. I had an advantage, you know, at that point. So I think the Kawasaki would have been the best. I didn't have to. We just worked well together.
How about a favorite racetrack? Well, now we're close to Sears Point here.
Yeah.
What about Sears?
That was a super challenging racetrack.
Very much a rider's racetrack.
An intimidating racetrack. It was not my favorite. I got to tell you, and I don't know why. But probably because I got to ride so many great racetracks all over the world. I mean, when you ride Suzuka, Japan, Mugello, Italy,
to pick one
France, I mean, come on. I can't put my finger on one. There's just no way. There's so many epic racetracks that I was able to turn wheels on, and yeah, it's great memories of a lot of those.
And speaking of turning wheels, you also in your career, again, this is something a lot of people don't realize, you turned 4 wheels in your career as well. You had a very successful career in car racing. Tell us a little bit about, I think it was prototypes or whatever. Tell us a little bit about your car career.
Jim France from Daytona Speedway, who he owns the Grand Am Rolex series, and he wanted to build an all-motorcycle driver team for his Rolex 24 Hours. So he hired myself, Jason Pridmore, and Jeff Ward, who's the motocross legend and nearly won the Indy 500 2 times too. People kind of don't know that, but so that was the team that he built and took us down there. My first car racing experience was in a prototype against guys like Scott Pruitt at the Rolex 24 Hours. So it was a big deal. That was a steep learning curve right